My name's Eli. I'm 33, and until recently, I was the financial backbone of my entire family, and I mean the entire family. Mom, Dad, my younger brother Noah, even the utilities for the house my aunt lives in temporarily while she gets back on her feet. It started small years ago. Dad lost a client. I was doing okay, so I offered to cover the phone bill, just for now. Then it was Mom's car insurance. Then Noah's new phone. Then my aunt's electric bill. No one ever really asked. They just assumed I'd keep helping because I could. Because I was the quiet one. The responsible one. The invisible scaffolding holding up their lives, and the only time they ever noticed me was when I dared to say no. I'd like to say the downfall began slowly, but honestly, it hit me on my birthday like a sucker punch. I'd made a reservation at this cozy bistro I'd always wanted to try, nothing over the top, just a quiet dinner for close family. I booked the whole back room and paid a non-refundable deposit for 8 people. I even let the waiter know in advance that it was my birthday, hoping for a little candle on a dessert, maybe a happy birthday from someone who cared. I got there 15 minutes early, dressed in the nicest blazer I owned. I was a little nervous, even excited, as I sat alone and scrolled through old pictures on my phone. A photo popped up from my last birthday, a homemade cake I'd baked myself, with "Happy Birthday, Eli" scrawled in barely legible frosting. No, I had forgotten. I was lactose intolerant and bought an ice cream cake that year. Everyone had eaten it except me. At 6:30 p.m. sharp, I looked toward the door. Nothing. 6:45. No calls, no texts. I started getting that tight feeling in my chest, like my lungs were too small for the room. At 7 o'clock, the waiter came over, smiling politely. "Still expecting company, sir?" I gave him a tight nod. "Yeah, just running late." By 7:20, I was done pretending. I ordered the steak, medium rare, a glass of wine. I forced myself to savor it, to chew slowly and act like I wasn't alone. I paid the full $2,300 bill in silence, which included the deposit, the unused meals, and the service fee for the private room. The waiter awkwardly boxed up the untouched plates. "In case someone joins you later," he said. I nodded. No one would. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. Aunt Renee posted a photo. I clicked it. My stomach turned. There they were, my entire family. Mom, Dad, Noah, Aunt Renee, even Cousin Jess and Uncle Mike, who never left their house without a petty excuse. The caption read, "Proud of our star." The star was Noah, smiling with a bowling trophy like he'd just solved world peace. They were at a cheap little diner 2 towns over. Someone had even brought balloons. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just hollow. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just drove home in complete silence. I parked in my garage, sat in the driver's seat for a while with the engine off, and let the cold creep in. Then I walked into the kitchen, made myself a cup of tea, and pulled out a little black notebook I kept in the drawer next to my bills. It had a list. A quiet, ugly list I'd started a year ago after Noah drunkenly called me our little family accountant, and everyone laughed. There were no jokes in that notebook. Just cold, hard numbers. Line by line, Dad's car insurance, Mom's phone plan, Noah's Spotify premium, Aunt Renee's electric, the gas bill I paid quarterly. I had dates, amounts, even copies of receipts. And next to each line, I had a little checkbox. Some were already marked. When I told Jess last year I wasn't renewing her gym membership, she called me selfish. That box got a checkmark. That night, I sat on the couch and stared at the blank TV screen. The light from the hallway caught the glint of the notebook's spiral binding. I grabbed my laptop. One by one, I logged into every account. No theatrics. No guilt. Just calm, methodical termination. Dad's car insurance. Policy canceled. Mom's phone plan. Deactivated. Number no longer in service. Family Netflix. Logged out all devices. Noah's credit card that I'd co-signed, just to help his credit score, reported as compromised and removed. The utilities? I sent a notice to Aunt Renee. Account transfer required within 7 days to avoid service interruption. I didn't leave a note. Didn't text a warning. I didn't owe them a theatrical exit. I went to bed with my phone on silent and slept like a rock for the first time in months. By sunrise, I had 16 missed calls. By 10 a.m., 38. Most were from Mom. A few from Dad. One from Noah, which I only recognized because his contact photo was still that smug smirk he took at a family barbecue, holding a beer and calling himself the favorite son. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. I didn't need to. Instead, I got dressed, drove to the local park, and just sat on a bench, watching the ducks, breathing in peace, letting it settle over me like a warm blanket. At 11:15 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from my dad. "We need to talk. You're being childish. We're your family." I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the screen. For a split second, I almost replied. But then I remembered sitting alone in that restaurant while my family celebrated a participation trophy like it was a Nobel Prize. So I locked my phone. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. But that was just the first ripple. Because what I didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this notebook I kept, it held more than bills. It held receipts, evidence, and one very specific secret they'd all forgotten about. The one that would turn their little family system completely upside down. And I had every intention of using it. The notebook was more than just a list of payments. It was a paper trail, a quiet archive of every time I bailed them out, signed for them, or covered something they promised to repay. There were credit card statements in my name that Noah had used just until payday that never came. Screenshots of texts from Dad asking me to just put this month's insurance on your card because his account was locked again. Even my aunt's signature from when I'd co-signed for her to get a reduced deposit on her apartment, an apartment she hadn't paid rent on in 4 months, because she thought the landlord wouldn't evict someone with Eli on the lease. And most importantly, a business loan. A $28,000 small business loan I had co-signed with Dad 4 years ago when he wanted to restart his landscaping business. I believed in him. I really did. But after the first year, he started using the money to pay personal bills. The equipment sat in the garage gathering dust while the payments kept coming out of my bank account. They'd all forgotten. Or maybe they thought I had. They'd taken advantage of my silence, my patience, my need to avoid conflict. But what they didn't understand was that silence doesn't mean ignorance. Patience doesn't mean weakness. And conflict? Well, sometimes conflict just means consequences. It started 2 days later. That's when the electricity at Aunt Renee's apartment went out. I didn't hear it from her, no. I saw it on Facebook. She posted a furious rant about how the local utility company has no compassion and how some people are just trying to survive. The comments section was brutal. She kept replying to people that it wasn't her fault and someone was supposed to handle it. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I didn't even open the app again for the rest of the day. But I did make one more move. I opened the folder I had on my desktop titled Family Financials and scanned the PDF labeled Business Loan Agreement, Mitchell Landscaping. I scrolled to the signature section. There it was, my name, next to my father's. I'd signed the paperwork at his kitchen table, next to a cold cup of coffee, while he told me he was going to make the family proud again. He didn't. And since then, I'd made the minimum payments, kept it afloat just enough to avoid default, because I didn't want it to ruin his credit. But now, his credit score was about to get a wake-up call. I called the bank. "Hi, I need to make a change to the payment responsibility on a business loan I co-signed a few years ago." The rep was polite. Asked if I was intending to transfer ownership or default. "I'm not paying it anymore," I said calmly. "The business isn't operational. My co-signer has been unresponsive, and the funds have been used for personal expenses. I'll be sending a full fraud report." She paused. "Sir, you realize this will impact both your credit and his." I didn't even blink. "Yes, but only one of us deserves it." I hung up and drafted the email. Attached every document, every message, even screenshots of Facebook posts where Dad bragged about using the business card to pay for a new flat screen. I sent it to the fraud division. Then I exhaled, like I'd been holding my breath for 4 years and finally let it go. That same afternoon, I got a call from Mom. I didn't answer. Then a call from Noah. I didn't answer that either. At 6:04 p.m., a knock came at my door. I peeked through the peephole. Noah. I didn't open it. He knocked again, louder this time. Then I heard him mutter, "Unbelievable," and stomp away. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a text. "You're seriously doing this? Over a dinner?" And that's when it really hit me. To them, that dinner was a joke, an inconvenience. Just Eli being sensitive again. They didn't see the build-up. The 10 years of quiet sacrifice. The birthdays skipped, the promotions ignored, the loans repaid with excuses instead of money. To them, I was a bank with a doormat attached. I went back to the couch and turned on the TV, letting the quiet buzz of some random cooking show play in the background while I scrolled through the final set of files in my notebook. There was one last account, Something none of them knew I still had access to: Grandma's estate trust. Before she passed, Grandma left a modest trust fund that she split between her grandchildren. Except, I was the only one who hadn't touched mine. I let Noah dip into his for a down payment on a motorcycle. Jess used hers for a vacation. I kept mine intact. Let it grow. The trustee had called me last year and asked if I wanted to move it into my personal account, but I said no. I didn't want the family asking questions. But now? Now I had no reason to hide. I transferred the full amount, just over $38,000, into my private savings account. Not because I needed the money, but because it was the only thing left they couldn't touch. At 8:30 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a group chat, the one called Fam Squad that I never renamed. Mom texted, "Eli, we need to talk. This isn't how family treats each other." Dad texted, "You've made your point. Now undo whatever you did with the accounts. We'll talk it through like adults." Noah texted, "So what? Now you're the villain? All because nobody wanted to eat overpriced salmon on your birthday?" I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed a single sentence: "You'll understand when you're more successful." I left the group chat, blocked the numbers, turned off my phone. But even then, I wasn't done, because I had one more move planned. Something they wouldn't see coming. Something that would finally show them what it really meant to lose the person they thought they could walk all over. And I already had the envelope sealed and ready. The envelope was heavy, not in weight, but in meaning. It had sat in the drawer of my desk for almost 6 months, untouched, waiting. I hadn't planned to use it like this, not originally. It was something I drafted after a particularly brutal holiday visit, when Dad casually dropped that real men don't need thank yous after I paid for Christmas dinner and gifts for everyone's kids. I remember standing in my apartment afterward, just staring at my fridge, the silence almost deafening. That night, I wrote the letter. I didn't mail it. I didn't even seal it. But I kept it, just in case. Now, though, it was sealed. And it wasn't going in the mailbox. It was going to Dad in person. The next morning, I drove to his house. Their house. The house I grew up in. It was a tidy 2-story with the same peeling mailbox that Dad had promised to replace since 2014. The porch light still flickered, like it always did when someone stepped on the 3rd stair. And the lawn? Overgrown. His landscaping business clearly wasn't even taking care of his own front yard. I didn't go to the door. I placed the envelope between the screen and the front door, right next to the stack of unopened mail they never bothered to collect. Then I got back in my car, pulled around the corner, and parked. I wanted to see who picked it up. At 9:17 a.m., the envelope sat on my desk, untouched for weeks. Not because I was hesitant, but because timing mattered. And I wanted this to land with the weight of every year I'd spent being their safety net, their invisible backup plan, their go-to-fixer when their poor choices caught up to them. This wasn't just a reaction to a missed dinner. This was the final chapter of a pattern that had been writing itself for a decade. I had been planning this part long before my birthday, long before the steak went cold in front of me while they posed with Noah's bowling trophy like he'd cured cancer. I didn't just wake up one day and decide to cut them off. I had watched them make choice after choice that left me footing the bill, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically. I kept that envelope in plain sight, right next to my laptop. A reminder that I had power now, not just leverage, but clarity and peace. Because what was inside that envelope wasn't a bombshell. It was a mirror, a truth they couldn't escape from once it was in their hands. I'll get to what was inside soon. But first, Noah. He didn't take the silence well. Neither did Dad or Aunt Renee, but Noah was the one who escalated things. He started texting me from random numbers, calling from burner apps. "You're ruining everything," one of the messages read. "We're family. Family forgives." Another one, "You're not better than us just because you got some fancy job and a chip on your shoulder." That one made me laugh out loud. A chip on my shoulder? I had a ledger on my shoulder. At one point, he sent a long paragraph about how he was going through a hard time and that I needed to be the bigger person. Then the kicker: "You owe us." Owe them? That word made something in my chest turn to ice. I owed them? After the rent I paid for my parents when Dad was between jobs for 2 years? After the credit card I opened just so Noah could rent a car for spring break and he forgot to pay it off? After the groceries, the holidays, the school books for my cousin that I paid for when Aunt Renee said, "You're doing well, right?" and smiled like it was charming? I owed them? I didn't respond. I just updated the notes in my folder. Meanwhile, I started getting messages from extended family, cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Hey man, heard there's some drama. Just wanted to say we love you. Polite, careful, neutral. One even tried to probe. Your mom's been really upset. I think she misses you. I replied, she missed my birthday too. I guess we're even. The guilt attempts didn't stop there. Mom left a voicemail one night, just after 11 p.m. Her voice was thick with emotion, like she was holding back tears. Eli, sweetheart. I don't know what happened. I thought we were fine. If this is about the dinner, it was just bad timing. Noah had his celebration already planned, and, well, your father didn't know you'd made reservations. We didn't mean to hurt you. Please call me. She sounded fragile, like someone trying to reach through glass. I sat there listening in the dark, the streetlight outside casting a pale glow through the window. I thought about the number of times I'd left her similar messages on birthdays, on holidays, on days when I just wanted to feel like I mattered. She never called back. But now that she needed me, suddenly I was worth a voicemail. I didn't delete it, but I didn't respond either. And the next day, I mailed the envelope. Certified, return receipt requested. Not emailed, not scanned. Mailed. Because I wanted them to hold it, to open it, to read every page in their hands, not on a screen they could swipe away from. Inside was a packet of documents, neatly organized, labeled, 3-hole punched. I'd made copies for myself and stored the originals in a safety deposit box weeks ago. The first page was a typed letter. To whom it may concern, this is a formal notification that I, Elijah Mitchell, will no longer be financially supporting or co-signing for any debts, expenses, or obligations pertaining to the following individuals: Mitchell Sr., father; Carol Mitchell, mother; Noah Mitchell, brother; and Renee Clark, aunt. Please find enclosed documentation of payments, account closures, co-sign withdrawals, and transferred liabilities. Any further attempts to contact me regarding these matters will be ignored or forwarded to my attorney. Beneath the letter were spreadsheets, charts, bank records, text messages with dates and dollar amounts, highlighted lines showing recurring transfers from my accounts to theirs, the terms of the business loan, the $7,200 I'd paid toward it, screenshots from the landscaping company's Facebook page, inactive since 2019. But the real bombshell was in the final section, the estate addendum from Grandma's trust fund. I had included an affidavit from the trustee. It stated that Noah had accessed his portion of the trust 2 years before he was legally permitted to, and that he'd falsified an employment verification form to do so, an action that would legally bar him from ever receiving any remaining disbursements or family-held financial assistance connected to the estate. Why did I include it? Because Mom and Dad had promised to even it out by giving him part of mine when I got older. They'd even told me not to touch it yet, so the family could plan it fairly. I smiled when I read those old texts again. Then I printed them and stapled them to the affidavit. Let them try to spin it now. I got the delivery confirmation 3 days later. Then the silence began. Not a single call, not a voicemail, no texts, no burner numbers, no subtweets, no Facebook shade, just silence. And that silence? It was louder than any apology they could have sent, because silence meant they'd finally read it. But I wasn't done watching the fallout, because in 2 weeks, the bank was going to report the business loan as delinquent. And when they did, Dad's credit, already fragile, was going to crater. And when that happened, the new truck he was trying to lease in his name, that deal would fall through. And I already knew what day the rejection letter would arrive. It arrived on a Tuesday. I knew this because I'd called the dealership 2 weeks earlier, anonymously, and asked if they required a hard credit pull before finalizing lease paperwork. They did. I also knew Dad had applied for the truck on a Saturday, thinking the business loan wouldn't reflect until after the credit cycle reset. That was his mistake. His other mistake? Still thinking I was the same quiet doormat of a son who'd just keep paying and forgiving while being treated like the family's unpaid intern. I got the first message from a number I didn't recognize. They declined it. You know why? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That silence had power now. For the first time in my life, I wasn't scrambling to fix things or soften the blow. I was just letting it all burn. Not out of spite, but out of long, overdue necessity. The next day, I stopped by my local coffee shop. As I was sipping a latte and scrolling emails, I got an alert from an old shared Google Drive folder, one I hadn't touched in years. It was titled Mitchell Family Projects. I almost deleted the notification, assuming it was some forgotten doc. But when I opened it, I saw a new file, Eli, please read. Against my better judgment, I opened it. It was a letter. From Dad. Typed. Rambling. Overly formal in some places and oddly familiar in others. A patchwork of excuses, guilt-tripping, half apologies, and not-so-subtle manipulations. I know we haven't always appreciated you the way we should have, but you know how this family works. We survive by sticking together. Sometimes we drop the ball. We've all made mistakes. I don't think it's fair to punish everyone for something as small as a dinner. He called my act of cutting ties an overreaction. He referred to the money I'd spent as contributions. He even tried to pivot the narrative. Noah has been struggling. You're the big brother. If you turn your back on him now, how's that any different than what you say we've done to you? That line made me laugh. How is it different? Because I never laughed in his face while he ate alone on his birthday. I never posted family photos behind his back. I never took his sacrifices and repackaged them as expectations. That's how it was different. And then came the line that told me everything I needed to know about how little he'd changed. You made your point. Now come back. Come back. As if I'd simply taken a dramatic vacation from being their personal ATM. As if this whole thing was just a tantrum. As if they could just hit reset and things would go back to normal. That word, normal, was poison. Because for them, normal was me covering bills, showing up to family events alone, being the butt of their passive-aggressive jokes, and hearing you wouldn't understand every time I questioned why they treated Noah like royalty. Normal was me last. But I wasn't going back to that. Ever. I closed the letter, deleted the document, and sent one final email from a burner account with no name. Message received. No further contact necessary. Take care. And that was it. I blocked the folder, removed access, deleted the shared drive permanently. I spent the next few weeks doing something I hadn't done in years, building my life. I took a weekend trip to the coast, alone, intentionally. I ate seafood at a beachside restaurant and toasted a glass of wine to no one in particular. I started seeing a therapist, too. Not because I felt broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd let it go on for so long. Why I'd been the human band-aid for a family that never stopped bleeding me dry. I didn't need closure from them. I needed clarity for myself. And with every day that passed without another guilt text, another phone call, another sarcastic comment disguised as a joke, I felt lighter, freer, more alive than I had in a decade. One afternoon, about a month later, I got coffee with an old friend from college, Mark. We hadn't spoken in a couple years. He'd heard about the situation through mutual friends. After some polite catch-up, he looked at me across the table and asked, "So what now? Are you done with them for good?" I took a slow sip of coffee before answering. "Yeah," I said. "I am." He nodded. "Feels weird, doesn't it?" "It does," I admitted. "But it also feels clean. Because that's what cutting ties felt like. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just clean. Like I had finally scrubbed the guilt and obligation off my skin and stepped into something new, something quieter, more honest, and entirely mine. And no, they didn't fade away quietly. Of course not. I heard through the grapevine that Noah tried applying for a small loan and got rejected. His landlord apparently called my old number because he'd listed me as an emergency contact. I'd already disconnected that line. Aunt Renee was shocked when her gas got shut off for non-payment. She posted a GoFundMe asking for support during this difficult time, and the only donation was from a high school friend who sent $5 and a comment that read, "Actions have consequences." Mom eventually stopped trying to call. But I heard she told one of her coworkers that Eli's just going through a selfish phase. That stung a little, but not for long. Because deep down, I knew I hadn't changed. I just stopped hiding who I really was. I'd stopped being their plan B. Stopped being their backup wallet. Stopped being the emotional punching bag for a family that never bothered to check if I was okay. Now I was just Eli. Not the responsible one. Not the dependable one. Not the fixer. Just a man with boundaries. With peace. With freedom. And the day I stopped funding their lives? That was the day I finally started living my own.